Hey, what's up, everybody? It is Dante Fortson here. I hope everyone is having a great night. Wherever you are, we're going to go ahead and get started in just a moment. Press the number one, if you can hear me in the chat room, please, for those of you who are listening live. If you can't hear me, it wouldn't make sense for you to press a number. But if you can hear me, please press the number one. I'm waiting to see the number ones pop up before I continue. All right, there's a few second delay. I do see the ones coming through the chat room now. So we are on a slight delay. So I'm gonna go ahead and jump into everything since I do see those ones popping up. If you are visiting for the first time, make sure you hit the thumbs up button, the like button, and make sure you go ahead and click the subscription or the subscribe button. And if you've already clicked the subscribe button, make sure you hit the thumbs up button. And let's see, HebrewSphere.com. Make sure you go check out HebrewSphere.com, Israelite owned social media network. For those of you who want to support, go to Cash App and type in hashtag BHITB, or you can support via patreon.com/Dante Fortson. And finally, if you're looking for research information, you can go to blackhistoryinthebible.com. So my guest tonight does not need a lot of introduction. Most of you are familiar with his YouTube channel and somewhat controversial opinions and guests on his show. And I've been wanting to talk to Brother Berean for a while. He interviewed me, I want to say a couple months ago. And so now he's on the show, and I'm going to talk to Brother Berean, and we're going to hopefully learn some new stuff, get some insights. If you guys have questions, type them in the chat. I will try to get to a few of the questions tonight. So let me see here if I can. Let me turn on my chat so I can actually see you guys' chat real quick. Hold on. I'm trying StreamYard. This is only my second time using StreamYard. So I'm not sure how to turn on the YouTube chat so I can see everything. Hold on. Give me 1 second here and I'll get everything up and running right. Last time I did this, it was already in the proper chat. Here we go. Give me a second. I'm having technical difficulties here with this. All right, I got it. We're up and running now. I figured everything out. Cool. Perfect. All right, so here we go. I'm going to go ahead and bring on Brother Berean now. Brother Berean, how you doing tonight?
Grace and peace, sir. Can you hear me now?
All right, it's good. It's good having you here.
Good to be here.
Messing up everything. I'm dropping stuff over here. All right, here we go. So let's start at the beginning. How did you grow up? Did you grow up in a religious household? What brought you to this belief system?
Yeah, my mother, grace and peace, everybody, be unto you from God the Father and our Lord and Savior Jesus Christ. My mother was a youth minister. She was in charge of the youth choir back in the days in Brooklyn, in Bed-Stuy, Brooklyn, in the Church of God. So I grew up in church, heavily involved in church, and my mom, family, the choir, going to conferences and conventions and camp meetings and things of that nature. I was definitely in the church. And then, when I got of age, you know how it is. They start asking you when you become a teenager, 15, 16, if you want to go. Do you want to go to church? Once I had the choice, I'm like, nah, I'm done. I'm good. I'm going to hang out on the avenue. And that was the beginning of some trouble right there for me. But that's basically how I started off. I've been in the church. My family's in the church. My sisters, nieces, nephews, everybody's involved in ministry, even up until this day. I was raised up in a good, strong Christian household. My pops wasn't a believer, but he definitely encouraged us going to church and stuff like that. So my mom, she just took the lead with that as far as our spirituality and stuff. and and the word is definitely was instilled in us from young.
All right, so you were brought up in a Christian household. Now, how long did you hold on to your traditional beliefs? Because I know you like to have answers to questions. How long did tradition satisfy you before you had to start digging for your own answers?
It was a while when I started getting in trouble, going to hang out and get in Bed-Stuy and Albany, and I started hanging out in the projects in Brooklyn. I started getting in trouble with some people. Another brother, I think my first case, I caught a case with Corinthian, another church guy, Pentecostal guy, and his mother, gave him the choice if he wanted to go to church or not, and him and I were in the streets, and I caught a case with him, and I started getting in trouble, and going back and forth to the island, Rikers Island, and that's when I was like, well, I want to rededicate my life after 2 or 3 times in and out. I mean, it looks like it was getting serious, and they were trying to send me away. I eventually had to go away. Then I rededicated my life. I was like, Lord, I know these streets are not for me. But once I got there, that's when the problem started. I started running into some guards, the 5%ers, and people that I knew from the neighborhood. I told them I was trying to stay away from them and I was going to walk a straight line, but I ended up meeting them upstate anyway, meeting them on the island and, getting transported upstate, going through the penal system. I ran into a lot of them and they would see me in my cell. They would see me going to church and, reading my Bible in the yard. And that's when the trouble started.
All right, so now you mentioned going away, and a lot of us know what that means. For those that don't, Google it. Now, once you're inside, there's a lot of religious stuff going on, and most people that ain't been inside, they don't know. There's a lot of religious stuff going on. You got Islam, like you said, the 5%ers. You got Christianity. You got Kemet. You got pretty much everything in there. What made you stick with the Bible and not gravitate towards some of these other belief systems while in there?
Because as time went on, I started, I'm heavy in prayer and I'm reading the word. We going to Bible study and stuff. And I noticed they started saying a lot of stuff, bringing up, it was a lot of that Osiris, the 5%ers and stuff. They were heavy into Kemet. So I started getting a lot of books, started laying into Dr. Ben. But for some reason, a lot of what they were saying, I can ride with it because of a lot of what was going on, what I call a deep state church or just Christianity in general. I can't even say Europeanized Christianity. There were so many things that they were saying, and there was so much that was going on with Christianity that I really had a problem, and I really had to do some self-examining in the scriptures and dealing with the pictures and the movies and things of that nature. And that's what had me to really, really dig. And it started to do with the pictures. A lot of them were troubling me about pictures. And I remember running into some other people that were bringing out things with the scripture as far as the complexion of the Apostle Paul and him in Book of Acts being confused with an Egyptian and Moses' wife. And I started looking at things like the Black presence in the Bible. And I started laying into it right there. And there weren't a lot of Israelites in there. There was a fight back in the 90s. It was a heavy thing with the 5%ers. It was real heavy with them. And, the Osiris thing was just jumping. A lot of 5%ers were switching to the Kemetic spirituality. So that was the majority of it, going back and forth with them and the slave ship Jesus and Europeans and slavery. And that is kind of the beginning of it right there. I spent a lot of time in my cellar, spent a lot of time by myself. But when I would get to the yard, they would come out. And I would do like I would do on, Berean TV. We would talk and they would gather. Back then, they didn't they didn't care if it was more than 4 people gathered. People that's in the penitentiary right now tell me, we can't have a big crowd. Back then, I go to the yard, there's 30, 40 people around me and they throwing questions out and we just going in. So it was a totally different atmosphere in that. And I grew a lot from that. So I was tolerant with a lot of people. So we would go back and forth and they said, well, come to the yard tonight. And we would go back and we would stay on one subject for a long time. A lot of people get offended when I'm online and I'm talking to people and I'm letting them share their opinion. But I was trained in that you have to listen to other people. And there, you can't just violate. You have to respect everybody. And it's different from, what a lot of church people, quote unquote, church people would do now when they're in the street. So there's a certain tolerance that I had that came from that. And I learned a lot from them guys, and them guys learned a lot from me also. And, there was some guys that said, man, I'm going to start going to church, some Muslim brothers. I was invited, Ramadan. They want to invite everybody because at the end of the day, it's plenty food. I would get invited to Ramadan. I would go to the mosque and sit down, and we would be back and forth with Islam and the history of the Sunnah of the Prophet Muhammad. We would be back and forth to the place to where it got that they had to call the outside imam, and he would come in and he would start asking questions, and we're going through hadith and everything. And that was kind of like my seminary. When brothers talk about seminary and stuff, that was kind of like my training and how I came up. I found so much truth in the word of God. I had problems with the pictures. I had problems with things they did in Christianity. I had problems with the tree. I started seeing so much stuff, and I was wondering why Christianity would do so many things that's unbiblical. And, later on, I found out a lot of people saying, well, that's tradition, and our tradition is important. But in the meantime, we were always banging. I'm reading Schick publication and so many other books. We're banging on the Roman Catholic Church, and we're saying that sola scriptura, scripture stands alone and forget everything else. And at the same time, I'm seeing that we're doing some things that just came down through the church fathers, that just came down later on, that was tradition and not biblical. I didn't have any problems in there with them at all. We did a lot of evangelizing, a lot of brothers in there saved and word worshiping, real church. One thing about guys in there, they having real church, they're not playing no games, and they're seeing you day in, day out. They're living with you for years at a time. So when I came home, it was a little different. I think I ran into some other serious problems when I came home, dealing with Christians and how Christians viewed things and how much Christians wanted to hold on to certain things that weren't biblical. And I was kind of shocked that people didn't want to really go in for the gospel. So years later, I end up seeing some guys in the street, Kingston and Troop, Bed-Stuy. The Israelites would be downtown Brooklyn, and I would go back and forth and get into it with them. But to be honest, a lot of them were saying things, and I had views that held closer to them than a lot of people in the church that I was going to. I continued in the church, but there were some other people that held some views that I held on to, and the church people were fighting me. They were fighting me concerning certain things, and I seriously had a problem with that. Let me try to read some of the screens here, what's on the screen, in case any questions coming up.
All right, so now I think it's interesting that you pointed out something that I know personally myself. It's different on the inside, the way people carry themselves and conduct themselves. Mm-hmm. And like you said, a lot of the stuff that these church people do is violation inside of there. They wouldn't, do it in there. Mm-hmm. And I'll be with you sometimes with some of the stuff you're saying, because some of these dudes get way out of pocket. And being in there, you get around a lot of information and people that are knowledgeable, so you can't just, like you say, move a certain way on the inside. Now, you said something about the pictures bothered you. What exactly was it about the pictures that started to bother you?
Oh, being in there, it's a heavy with a lot of them cats in the Kemetic spirituality. It's a us against them, that European thing, everybody, because we're in there, especially not so much Rikers Island, there's a lot of black officers, but once you get upstate, almost all of the officers, 99% of the officers are European. So it's us against them, and these are the devils, and just going through a lot of history. And one thing I could say, guys in there, they don't have too much to do. You're going to lift weights. You're going to go to the yard. You're going to work out. You're going to read books. And it's a lot of brothers in there reading books. You just can't start opening up your mouth and just saying anything off the top of your head. You got to really know, because there's some guys spending some time in there, and there's so much history that they've been bringing out that we didn't learn in school. And that was kind of shocking to me. And just the mere fact, like some brothers would say, just the mere fact that they educate us the way they educate us, they're doing it for a reason. And then I'm just going to the different chaplains in the different prisons, and I'm looking through the books. I'm looking through all of their books, and it's just like they said, everybody is European. Jesus, Moses, maybe you'll find a black devil here and there, but everybody else. I started ordering books from different places. They're bringing bringing box and boxes of donations of books, and everything is the same thing. Why is it a certain narrative? Why are the angels? Why are the holy people of prophets? Everybody in there Europeans. And then we started looking at maps and the land and Genesis 10 and all of that stuff just started bringing out some problems. Even though the 5%ers may misquote a lot of scriptures, when it came down to Genesis 10 and the land and the maps and certain things that they were saying, bringing up the supreme wisdom and, the 5% lessons, Elijah Muhammad, W.D. Fard, a lot of the stuff that they were saying was, I really had to take a look at. And guys locked in and they go, yo, come on and answer our question. And they, I got the whole floor. They hollering on the tail, officers telling us to be quiet, and they going in. They want me to talk. And they got some hard questions. And I started looking at some things and I'm like, man, if Christians came up in here and heard some of this, they would be in trouble. They would be in trouble for real. So I came home kind of with that attitude, and I would talk to believers and stuff like that. But at the same time, I would do like them guys did me. I would challenge some of them. I meant good in my heart. I didn't want to offend them, but a lot of people got upset. A lot of people started saying things like, color don't matter. You went in there, your mind got messed up. And, they would say things like that because a lot of us Christians get so spiritual. We act like color doesn't matter, but these people made it a color thing. And that's a problem. And if you can't see beyond that, you can't see the Bible says, I would not have you ignorant of the enemy's devices. Satan has used some things, and race is one of the things. Scientific racism. We got some things that he's done, and we can't get around it. And in order to be a knowledgeable believer today, you're going to have to articulate why you're still a believer, even though A, B, C, and D have been done, and Christianity has a criminal record. People say, well, you can't be a minister talking about Christianity got a criminal record. So when I came home, I was in the street. I was back and forth with, like I said, I was back and forth with the Israelites, but I'll be downtown J Street. I'll be witnessing on the train, doing my thing. Because, I'm home. I'm on parole. I can't do but so much. So I'm in the street and I'm witnessing and this and that. And I ran into some ministers. And I was in the Kojic. I was preaching the Kojic and Church of God of Christ in Brooklyn, the 2 or 3 churches. I ran into some people over there. As time went on, my sister, my family was like, listen, we need to open up a ministry. They got a club. Somebody got killed in the club down the block, and they shut it down, and it's been abandoned for a minute. The club been abandoned. We need to go speak to the landlord. We need to speak to the landlord and try to get that building. So all of those people, when you're downtown Brooklyn, all of those people, you can tell them you got a spot. Because a lot of people say, where do you teach? And I couldn't really talk about the stuff that I talked about in the street. I'm doing like I see the Israelites doing. I can't talk about that stuff in the street around my Kojic people. So to me, I said, that makes sense. Let me go find a spot so I can talk my talk. And that's kind of how we, I got a building and I end up giving out food and teaching and doing some things in there. And that's how, people often hear that I was a pastor. That's how I got a building. But as time went on, the landlord started seeing the crowd that was coming. And, he said, I'm going to give you a year free rent. Don't worry. I get in there. My sister, my family, we all do construction. So I'm in there. We flip the building out. We get donations. People on my mom's job, people in the neighborhood that knew me before I went up north, we started getting donations. We flipped the building out. So by the time the landlord came and he saw the building, he see the crowd outside, plus we giving out food, he thinking that we got bread, and I didn't really get it in writing. And he, after a couple of months, he started pressing me for rent. I said, I don't really have no rent yet, but he's seeing the crowd and he's trying to add up the offering money when, to be honest, offering $80, $120, the rent was $1,800. And that's kind of where the problems came in. So I turned around, and one of the bishops that was coming to Rikers Island, I went to him. I went to his church. I said, I'm home now. And I started talking to him. And I said, listen, I got 3 o'clock in the afternoon on Sundays. You can have prime time Sunday morning. Come and see the building. He's seen the building. We got chandelier. We flipped it. Construction is what I do. Flip the building. And he was like, all right, man, I'm going to go back and I'm going to talk to my elders about it. So I'm thinking everything good. I go back. I tell my family, don't worry. I got a way to save the building. Come to find out, this bishop go behind my back and go to the Arab store downstairs and try to get the landlord number. The man in the deli called me. He said, that dark-skinned man that you was with, he came here. He tried to go behind my back and And so at that point, I'm done with Christianity again. Now I'm home. I'm like, oh man, I'm done. My last hope, I thought that I could, get somebody to help me and split this rent with me. And he tried to go behind my back and get me put out the building and tell the landlord, yo, I'll pay the whole rent. I'll pay the back rent or whatever. Just get him out the building. I want the whole building for myself. So, that was definitely, I was shook. I was done. So I walked away from the ministry. And I'm like, it is what it is. Years later, people started hitting me that knew me, and they were asking me stuff and sending me little stuff online. And I seen Ray Hagin, I seen some other stuff, and I started just answering questions because I remember this is that Osiris stuff that those guys in the penitentiary was talking about. And that's kind of how I got back into it, by answering little things online. And I end up doing a video response to that Reverend Ray Hagin, and I started answering some things in the conscious community because I see the whole Osiris Jesus myth coming up, and that's how I kind of got back into it. As time went on, I got a call, maybe a few months later. It wasn't even a year later. I got a couple of thousand followers. I got a call from Lisa Fields, Jude 3 Project. And she asked me to come, on and share. Now, I already got a channel now. I already got a channel jumping. I'm not really dealing with no church people behind that thing that happened with me and my building and that whole thing with that bishop and that went down. So I said, well, how did you get my number? I asked Lisa Fields that. She said to Dr. Eric Mason. And then I went back to my comment section and I said, oh, this is the guy that was in here commenting before. I said, all right. And she said, I'll give you his number. I can, connect you, whatever. So she connected us and I talked to him. I explained to him, with the building and everything. And that's kind of how I met him. And I got back and, I got a channel jumping there. And that's how I kind of got involved with the whole apologetic thing and urban apologetics.
All right. Now you mentioned quite a few things there. Now, one of the things I do want to point out that you mentioned how many books you read while you were up north. And for those that don't know what up north means, Google it. You mentioned how many books you read, and I don't think people understand how time flows different in there and how many books you can, really sit down and read when you don't have a lot of stuff going on. I remember I knocked out 32 books in less than 3 months, plus the NIV and the NKJV. So it's a lot of time you can just sit there reading. And a lot of people don't understand that some of the smartest brothers on the planet right now are behind bars because they have so much time just to sit, read, think, talk, pray, and do nothing else. And let's get to, let me see where I want to go to, because you covered a lot and I don't want to forget that. All right, let's start here. What made you choose the name Berean, and what made you start teaching in the style that you teach in versus the traditional preacher, hooping, hollering, prosperity gospel type of preaching?
I think it's because of them cats up north. I could say I could attribute that to the gods with the back and forth and the questions, that dialogue and throwing questions out there. And they, we're used to up north. The yard is like the barbershop. People sometimes will talk. People say sometimes like I'm interviewing you. I interviewed the brothers from Teo Ministry. Sometimes I cut people off because that's what we do, and I was used to doing that. And for some reason, it seems like the conversation flows better, and it's a different. It just came about organically, let's say. It just kind of came about organically, and a lot of people don't understand it. But others can say, well, I can tell the way you be sharing. I can tell you ain't been to no seminary. And I'm quick to tell them, no, I haven't. But I have been around some very heavy brothers, some serious praying brothers. Like on top of all of the books that I would read and everything on the conscious community, every single book that was out in the conscious community, I ordered it. And who became my wife later on, she was sending me a lot of material. She really helped me out a lot. And on top of that, just reading the New Testament once a week. I'm just running through that. It's just so much time. And I spent a lot of time in prayer and contemplation, and brothers asking real deep questions. And I understand that being around some of them deep brothers in there, that by asking questions, people can think. People will start thinking for themselves. You don't even have to really just ram doctrine down their throats. If you ask questions, you can steer people you can steer people to certain things, and you can help them think, and they appreciate it more when they come up with certain things on their own, when they have some time to contemplate. I've had some complaints from people. They say, well, sometimes you just throw stuff out there and you don't say nothing. You got to preach to the people. You got to give the people the doctrine of the Bible. No, I don't. Because that doesn't work all the time. And it's been plenty times that I've shared with people, and they've came up with certain things, and they've came back. A lot of brothers, even when I was in there, they came back with their wives and their family. He's a changed man for being in there with you for that year, for them 13 months, for those 9 months. And a lot of people came back, and you can learn by questions. And when I look and read, I see Jesus did the same thing. He would ask disciples questions to open up the floor. So when I came home, I'm like, man, I don't know how these brothers doing what they're doing. Why don't you answer something? Why don't you ask them questions? Shout out to the bishop and them. I love them all. I'm like, why don't y'all open up the floor for some questions? Or I will put my hand up there like, oh, here he go with that nonsense. But that's a different style. I think it's important to do that. And the more that I see things changing, I'm thinking that more individuals need to do this. More young ministers need to do this. And it's so hurtful because I see brothers, like I said, I see the camps on the corner. They have people come up, they asking questions, they asking some things. They want people to engage in dialogue, to make them think, to show them answers. And I don't know, something's just wrong with some of my brothers and sisters up in the church. They just don't see it. I just see things totally different from that experience. So it was bad. But when Rich says that all things work together for good, I think that I didn't waste my time in there. I used it wisely. I knew I was going to get out one day, and I'm like, Lord, I don't want to come back here anymore. Just show me. They would see me in my cell praying and reading them books, and they would be in there laughing at me. But I like, man, I get out of here. I'm done. I'm not coming back. In the name of the Lord. And thankfully that's what happened.
All right. And before we continue, let me give a shout out to a few people contending for the faith in the super chat. Larry Bryce and Yah's daughter, thank you for the super chats. And for those of you in the chat room, get those thumbs up, please. All right. So now you mentioned meeting Eric Mason. I'm backtrack a little and I'm gonna come back forward. You mentioned meeting Eric Mason. Is that how you got involved with the Urban Apologists, and how did that unfold to where you started, I guess, going to battle on their behalf and debating the conscious community?
When after I was on Lisa Field's show, I told you she gave me his number, and I noticed that he was the gentleman that would come in my comment section. And he would give a thumbs up. He would say some little stuff, some little things here and there. So when I called him, he said, man, I think we need to meet. He didn't do like no Pentecostal. The Lord told me to tell you. He said, I think we need to meet and chop it up and just see how things unfold from there. So we kept in touch with each other. And, immediately I told him about my past and having a church and getting hurt with the other pastor coming and trying to take the building. I explained everything to him. So we started talking on the phone back and forth. And I said, I'm just a conscious believer out here. So he turned around and he said, listen, and he started putting some stuff in my ear. He said, we woke Christians. He didn't tell me he was writing a book. He said he woke Christians. So as we were talking more, he said he wanted to start a movement. I was like, yeah, I'm down with starting a movement, but I broke it down. I said, man, listen, you be the face of the movement. I'm a convicted felon out here, but I'm gonna talk that talk. So then, he said, I'm down with Epiphany Church and this and that. So all of my earlier videos, you would hear me shouting out Epiphany Church, all the Epiphany churches and this and that, because he said we're in the beginning of starting this woke movement. Later on, he ended up dropping the book. So him and a couple of other people, that were already underneath him in ministry. I didn't know the brother Muhammad that was in the conscious community, but he said, I got some young cats that's with me too. And you would like them. And they going in and we do a lot of research and this and that. And I end up meeting the brother Muhammad later on when I went to speak at a conference down there with him. And, Muhammad was down with Dr. Malachi Z. York and all of that. He's steeped in the conscious community and all of that stuff. So that's how I kind of met him. And then, the movement started going and other people started coming on. as people were coming on, he was looking to form a team. He was looking to form a team. So, he would tell me, hit me about this person and that person. And that's how the things kind of started getting rolling. At that time, I had I had to be at least at 5,000 subscribers online. So out of everybody that was doing it, I was kind of the most popular person. And, I was really dealing with people in the conscious community, but on the church side, more and more believers started coming and listening to me. And, and that's kind of how the whole woke movement, that's how the whole movement got started, really, right there. And then of course, things end up going sideways. Muhammad invited pastor. I spoke one year. The next year, I didn't speak at the conference. Me and the finances and stuff were getting rough. But when he went to the conference, he said, "Listen, we're gonna start a whole movement. We're gonna be traveling all around the country, and I want to do this. I want to do that. I want to meet some other pastors. I know a lot of pastors out here. I want to get some funds so we can take an apologetic movement out here and be training and equipping people." And after a year, after a good bit of time went by, I told him, I said, "Man, I got to go back to work. My wife's beefing, my money, my bread is looking funny, and this and that." I tried to do some Sunday seminary. I started doing some classes, and this was the early stages. Muhammad ended up inviting some Messianic brothers, Pastor Kelly and Pastor Major. At this time, I'm back and forth with all type of people on YouTube. And when they were invited down there, things just didn't go the way they planned. And I spoke to him about it, and I just didn't like the response, but I didn't say anything. And I was like, "All right, you still general or bishop, whatever." I just kept riding, but I just felt something on the inside, because I was like, "You should have chopped it up with those brothers. They're out here, they're talking about the same thing. The Bible is our book." And so I didn't know what was the problem. And a few months later, Pastor Majors hit me, and Pastor Major said, "I'm going to sit down with Mason. We're just going to state our position and this and that." But he don't know I already talked to Mace months ago. And man, I'm like, "Man, listen." And that kind of hurt me. So I broke that. I told him, I said, "Listen, they ain't trying to talk to you. They ain't trying to talk to you, A, B, C, and D." And I kind of gave him some I kind of shared with him the sentiments from that side, and how the bishop felt or whatever. When I said bishop, I'm talking about Eric Mason, how he felt or whatever. And then he was like, I guess he still had his figured that they can go down there and sit down and chop it up and everything is good. My heart went out. I was like, "Yo, these brothers, they registered to the conference. They came out there." I don't know what I was thinking, but whatever I was thinking, that wasn't it. A couple of months later, it was Christmas time. Now I think his conference is in October. It was Christmas time, and some people throwing some stuff at him about the Christmas tree, and they already know I'm going in about the Christmas tree, and they throw some stuff at him. He want to post something from a European apologist, Hank Hanegraaff. He posted something about Hank Hanegraaff saying that the Christmas tree wasn't pagan and da-da-da-da-da. Now, I already felt the way about Pastor Kelly and Pastor Majors, be the way they were treated at the conference. I already felt some type of way. So by the time he dropped that little statement out there about Hank Hanegraaff and the Christmas tree ain't pagan, I'm thinking he blowing shots at me. That's all I needed. And I don't know. And that was the beginning of the end right there, really.
All right, now you mentioned, oh my goodness, you got so much stuff you just went over. All right, so let me backtrack a little bit. All right, let me go back here. Woke Church. You said that you mentioned the book. Mm-hmm. Now I find it odd that Vocab Malone actually mentions Woke Church a lot, and one of the purposes that Woke Church says is that it's supposed to address racism and stuff going on in the Black community. And then we have this non-Black guy who comes and he's using Woke Church as a cover to attack Black people. Was that the intent when you talked to Mason behind his book Woke Church? Was it to target Israelites specifically, or did he not have a goal and Israelites just kind of became the focus at some point?
I don't think he really, because he didn't really speak about Israel that much. But at the conference that I went to when I spoke, they had different conference rooms. They had the main conference where we'd have service, and they would break off and they would have different groups. The two largest groups were the group that was next door that was on the Hebrew Israelites, and my group, I spoke in the next largest conference room. We both had the largest conference rooms, myself and Vocab, and he spoke on the Israelites, and I guess he saw that that was a big thing. A lot of people were talking about it, and that's how the whole thing kind of went down. And we had the two largest groups, and people kind of saw that there was definitely something needed there. But that conference in general was an apologetic conference, but it just so happened that when you deal with the conscious community, and the 5%ers start netting them on Comedicism, and you're dealing with the Israelites, those are the two biggest threats against the church. So it just happened to be like those were the two biggest classrooms that we were holding lectures that day.
All right. Now you mentioned Pastor Kelly and Pastor Majors coming down there, and you didn't like the response. So I remember you doing a series of videos around that time where you were kind of hinting at stuff, but you didn't come out and say it exactly in one video. But what was it that bothered you about that whole scenario that kind of made you start leaning away from them? And also, what made you drop the title Urban Apologist?
Because, oh man, that's a whole different thing right there. Because I didn't like the way that I thought that he would sit there, and I know he was busy, and I found that was stuff with his wife. He was going through some stuff also, and I know the conference he was busy, but I thought they would get a better reception. They said they laughed, they took some pictures, they laughed and joked, but I thought that they would get into some doctrine to let the brothers present, this is what we feel. But it seemed like minds were kind of already made up. Like, yo, these dudes are coming, they trying to play both sides. They'll be riding over there with the camps, then they'll come over here and try to, basically steal members, steal sheep. And I know it's pastors' jobs to protect the doctrine, to protect certain things. But my thing is, like, if brothers are saying that Yeshua is the savior, what's the beef? I'm a little confused. What's the beef? But it's different because I'm used to talking to guys in the yard. I'm used to talking to guys in the street. We have so much in common. I don't understand what the problem is. And the mere fact, I was a little bit upset, really, the mere fact that weeks or months later, that Pastor Major's still holding on, thinking that, he don't know this guy done chug him off. This dude ain't think about him. And, and he kind of put the word out, everybody in the movement, and they gonna listen. When it's stand down, and he may try to act like he wasn't quarterbacking the thing. He threw the thing together. The movement is his thing. So when people start acting, I'm like, stop acting, they saying A, B, C, and D. What you gonna do about this? Anytime something jump off, I'm calling him. What you gonna do about this? He'll hit me. Yo, I see you threw up a video, blase. I'm like, yo, Bishop, what you want me to do? You want me to take the video down? Like, yeah, do me a favor, take that video down. All right, it ain't no big thing. But like I said, the straw that broke the camel back even after the major thing was that Christmas tree. You trying to act like that tree ain't even biblical. And I know, theologically, according to Jeremiah and seminary and all that, you can't really connect Jeremiah 10 with the tree, but the tree is not part of the primitive church. What's the beef? But I understand we were fighting two different battles. We on two different battlefronts, it seemed like. And he called me earlier, even right after I did the Lisa Fields thing, before he even asked me to speak at the conference. And he said, yo, they telling me, the other people hitting me, telling you got a Hebrew Israelite lean. I said, no, what you mean? I don't got no Hebrew Israelite lean. I don't have no Hebrew Israelite lean. What you mean by that? He's like, all right, no problem. And a couple of months later, I end up getting from his assistant and them, I end up getting the invite to come out, what books you're going to use and this and that. You got to upload your slides and all the instructions and, paperwork for me to sign or whatever. And the problem, like I said, the problem ended up coming in after that later on. The reason I kind of walk away from the urban apologetic thing is because I seen some lumping together. They stopped it after a while, but I seen where some people would do certain things and it would be more beneficial to lump my messianic people together with the camps, with racists, with certain things. And at the same time, and shout out to Vocab, I don't got no beef, but I seen after Major told me, after Pastor Mace told me some things, some stuff came out with Vocab and another brother's ex-Israelite. And I was like, Vocab, don't play with the culture. I just like, I ain't mean no disrespect, but just listen, don't play with the culture. Ain't nobody else say nothing, but some of these folks start throwing shade and doing what they want. And I started noticing some stuff with Vocab and James White and all of that. And I just didn't like that. So I'm gonna speak my mind. You know what I'm saying? That's how I'm gonna keep it 100. I'm not gonna whisper behind your back. I'm gonna speak my mind. I didn't like that A, B, C, and D. He hit me. He ain't like that. I'm not dealing with this and that. But in the meantime, vocab is bringing this Israelite thing to the forefront of European Christianity in America. So he start realizing vocab is important because he's doing what he's doing. And, you know, and regular middle class America is beginning to see and understand that. And I'm like, listen, I just didn't feel, you know, the thing was going in the right direction as far as how they were treating different people. I don't think they were breaking it down enough. A lot of people didn't want to dialogue on who are these Israelites and who are those Israelites. And I've been in the office with him. I said, listen, it's A, B, C, and D with these people right here. He said, well, it's not really your job. That's their job to defend, to talk about what they believe. I would rather them come on and everybody come on. Is the Son eternal? Teo, I asked you, Brother Teo, and them. Pastor Kalma asked everybody, you know, to show that the Son is unique. That, you know, everything that they were saying, I would bring people on and they would say the opposite. People started getting in his ear and telling him, listen, this dude, blase. So he had me on there one day and it was like, this dude got a big platform and he trying to pick up them Israelites, and that wasn't what the movement was doing. So I was like, man, I'd rather just walk away from the movement. I don't care about calling myself no urban apologist. I think about truth. I'm not banging for evangelicals. I'm not banging for no these people and that people. I just want the truth to be out here. And there's a lot of truth that those brothers are talking about. And we are basically the same with those brothers. It's just who's the people. And that's the only thing. I don't think that's enough to demonize the people, to say those people are not saved. Later on, he came back on the phone after some stuff happened with myself and Sister E and some other people that call themselves urban apologists too. He said, well, I'm not saying that they're not saved, but by then the rift was it was already too deep between us.
Now, I think it's interesting that someone who wrote a book like Woke Church is now using that same platform to oppress part of the Black community when the whole book was meant to be the opposite. Do you believe this is about money, or do they really, really have a concern for Black people's souls for believing that we're Israel?
No, I think he's not really. There's some conversations that we had about Israel and some preachers. All I'd say is shout out to the preachers. The preachers got it rough. There's a freedom I got that they don't have. There's certain things that they'll say in the office and about their family and hearing this Israel buzz years ago when they were younger growing up, but they would just never come out and say it. I don't, you know, I'm not really dependent on the church to carry me, especially now that I'm working. I had some beef financially before when he was telling me, chill, we're going to start a movement. We're going to start a movement. Listen, I tried to wait for years and I had some people, Sunday seminary, I had some people holding me down. I had to end up just doing regular work. I'm like, listen, first of all, I'm gonna speak my mind. I think it's different because he's moving with some European people. There's some good Christian Europeans out here. They're part of the movement and they want to, you know, and they want to help in the urban area. They want to help churches. They want to help pastors. After the conference, myself, him, and Pastor Jerome Gay, we were upstairs in a bar talking upstairs in a hotel. And he said, you know, he was asking me about my education. And he was like, listen, we got a movement. We got some people and they got some bread. We can get you in seminary. You know, they'll talk to you 18 months, whatever. They'll talk to you, interview you, your wife or whatever. They'll get you a building and they'll carry the building till the ministry grow and stuff. And I don't know. It's some people. You got to be careful. I'm reckless when I get out here and I talk. I'm reckless. I'm just different with it, you know. And other people can't be reckless like that. They got mortgages. They got other people that they mingle with. I don't really mingle with a lot of Europeans, so I'm quick to say some other things that might be offensive to some other people. Whereas he's kind of walking the thin line. He's doing what he could do. He's getting out there. But my whole thing was like, we can't get out here and start talking about the Bible ain't the white man's book and Jesus wasn't white and leave it at that. We got to get into the conversation. And if we're going to get in the conversation, we got to really get into it. And automatically we're going to bump heads discussing Israel, who's a darker hue in the Bible, and whitewashing. We got to go deeper with it. You know, they wanted to just touch a few things and just figure everything is okay and we can ride out with that. But it's way deeper than that. And the conversations were all online. It was getting out of control. So you can't get out here and just drop a video when you want and say this when you want and say, you know, this book coming out, that's coming out. Man, listen, we got to be 24/7 putting in this work and discussing stuff. People got questions. People got questions, period. And I don't think they wanted to really take it that far. Listen, we're not dealing with them. We're not dealing with none of that. And that's what it is. And when he said it, he put it out there, and everybody else that's up underneath that umbrella, everybody else that's riding that bandwagon, they're going to, he say fall back from that in this conversation. Blase, they're going to do that. And whoever's going to bang, and, there's a couple of loose people. And I called him and I didn't want to say their name online. I called them. I spoke to him. He said, well, I'm not the leader of everybody. I'm not the leader of all of them. He trying to act like he was a quarterback in the whole movement. You quarterback in the movement, and everybody know, don't speak on them dudes. No Israelites getting no light, and I'm ignorant doing what I want to do. So they had to eventually throw me up underneath the bus. I had some financial problems, and he end up trying to act like he was backpedaling. But I already said I wasn't part of the movement anymore. I didn't want to identify with being woke and all of that stuff. I just didn't want to identify with it anymore.
Now, that's interesting because you mentioned Muhammad Tanzamore, yourself included. I know some other people that have backed away from their movement specifically, and some have started backing away from the church. Do you think the church is equipped to handle this awakening that's happening in the Black community? And where do you see the church in 5 years from now if they don't get a handle on this and start answering some questions with truth?
Oh, people automatically believe it's going to say the church is triumphant, and the gates of hell shall never listen. The church got some explaining to do. The church got to call a spade a spade. The church is something for these so many educated pastors, so many ministers sitting on top of each other with MDivs and seminary trained, but they just scared to say. They won't. Like, I would get out here and say ignorant stuff like white folk have lied. That don't mean all white people are wicked. I'm gonna say white people have lied, and we need to discuss these lies. Some younger people want to discuss these lies. We have to bring out where this thing went wrong in order to make the thing right. And a lot of people don't want to get into some real serious, deep conversation. They don't want to do it. It's easier for me to talk on a video and attempt to control the narrative as opposed to bring it past the Majors on. And why do you feel A, B, C, and D? And the reason I talked about Pastor Major and Pastor Kelly specifically, because they were talking. I spoke to them specifically, and they said how their parents were involved in this thing. And then like they just ran into dudes on the corner and just all of a sudden wanted to rock some fringes. They come from a family of this, so it's totally, it's totally different. But they don't really want to have the whole dialogue. And even when I went to speak, as I was going around to speak, and I'm meeting people in the church, because they see how I am, people in church are coming up to me, yo, I'm really looking into this. What I want to get more information. I really believe weed. I'm like, why would Christians in church, going to church on Sunday, come and tell me they scared themselves? Because I know they ain't getting ready to pull up out of church, start keeping no Shabbat and all of that stuff and go join a Messianic congregation, but they'll come in, they'll just say what they're thinking. And I think sometimes some of these pastors, they're not even in touch with what's going on in the pew and what's coming across timelines. So if they think they can drop a few videos and control the narrative, they don't know. It's a new day. It's a new day. But let them keep sleeping. Let them keep sleeping. It is what it is. They think back in the days, we used to be able to do that in the church. If we don't discuss it, nobody gonna talk. I'm the bishop. If I ain't saying nothing, the rest of y'all gonna talk. Y'all go home and y'all whisper here and there, but y'all know don't bring it around here. It's a different day. It's coming up on people's timelines. It's just something different. It's just something different.
Now, it's interesting, and I agree with you that there's a lot changing, because I used to be heavily involved in the Christian church growing up, Baptist church specifically. Now, why do you think it is? Now, it was like this in the church I grew up in too, in Second Baptist. Why do you think it is that the Black church is so tolerant of the idea of white Jews or Israelites, but when our own people start to say we're Jews or Israelites, they have a problem? So let me ask you this about the Black church and the white church. Same question. Why do they have a problem with that?
I don't know. That's the thing that got me so shocked, that there's so many Europeans. Even growing up in Crown Heights in New York City, there's more Jews outside of Israel than anywhere else on the planet. Even growing up around them, they all, that I've always heard rabbis, I've always heard different people say it's not really about color and all of this crazy stuff. And for some reason, the church is like some self-hatred. They don't want to hear none of that stuff. I used to think it was because of evils that they would hear from camps and spots like GMS talking about raping in the kingdom and things of that nature. I used to think it was about that, but for some reason they just don't want to tolerate that. They don't want to deal with that whatsoever. I can't put a finger on it, but for some reason that's something that it turns their stomach. They can't see it. They don't even want to begin to investigate it like it might have some validity. They don't want to do none of that stuff. And shout out to the few people that do want to sit down, that do want to dialogue. I put myself out there and threw some names out there and thought some people would come and sit down and we can have some talk, because I'm willing to put myself on the line. Say whatever y'all want to say about me. I'm willing to put myself on the line. If some other people would come and sit down and just go back and forth and just let's share this information. Like I said, that's what we used to doing in the yard. And it's not just come on my show one time. We got to constantly go back and forth. I'll meet you in the yard tonight. We'll be on one question, on one scripture for 2-3 weeks, going to the yard every single day. We got to constantly hash it out so the other brothers around that's here and can come to a conclusion. Others can ask questions. We need ongoing dialogue. But for some reason, they don't want that. Jesus saved. Yeah, Jesus saves. And then, a lot of other people are stuck in replacement theology, but other people, a lot of us are just, listen, the rapture going to come, we're going to be gone. Whatever going to happen with Israel, it's going to happen down here with them. We're not going to be here. Don't worry about it. And that's the prevailing attitude.
You're right about that. That is the prevailing attitude. And the rapture doctrine is huge within really the white church, the black church. And we've seen those books. Was it Tim Jenkins, or Tim LaHaye and Jerry B. Jenkins, The Left Behind?
Very popular. Unbiblical and popular.
Super popular. I actually read all of the books except for the last two. I quit at the last two. I couldn't do it. I couldn't do it anymore. They were all like 400, 500, 600 pages long.
Yeah.
Now, let's talk about. Let me see. I got a few questions here, and I don't even actually want to. You answer some of these already. All right. So why don't you think some of these guys in the top positions in the church want to sit down and have a discussion or bring out the information and talk about it? What's the big deal if Israel was black or is black? Why is that such a big deal for people not to know? And yet it's just acceptable as white Jews to come in and say, hey, we're the real people of the book. Why is that a problem to bring out the real information?
I think it's going to be a mass exodus. 1, 2. I think it's going to be worse if the leaders sit down and talk. It's going to be worse. That's how come. Some people were feeling some type of way when Dr. E was talking in Houston. I think it was at his man church out there, and some young Sakari cats came out in front of the building. And then I don't know why he went over there and he started talking to them, but they like a lot of these young dudes are like block dudes. They going for the head, they going for the butt. They want to get down to it. They want to get down and they want to chop it up. A lot of guys, I think the main two or three people, they don't want to talk because some good points are going to come out and make people think. And they don't want to get caught up in there because, like I said, they're not going to admit nothing. Y'all say the Christmas tree ain't Bible. They're gonna do whatever they don't want to agree with anything to make people start thinking or even attempting to look in this direction. That's where I have a problem, because my thing is like, listen, it seems like you got an agenda if you don't want it to open up. I understand that more people would start leaving the church. If these people are over here teaching A, B, C, and D, I can understand that more people start leaving, because there are people out here that's hungry. You can't say people just leaving the church because they're full of the devil, because there's a lot of people going to alternate spiritualities. They're going to different things. So you can't say they don't want spirituality. They don't want God. People just want some things answered. And it's amazing to me that these people would run around and out of one side of their mouth, they would say, well, the black man needs to be affirmed. We've been through so much. We need to start affirming them with the Bible. So I'm sitting back saying, well, I ain't got a degree, but how else would you affirm them with the Bible but to show who in the Bible done lied and who in the Bible could be somebody else? I don't know any other way. So you would come, it's like you're trying to go down halfway down the road, but don't want to go all the way down the road. I don't know if you could be teaching or even just having people contemplate certain things. Certain things they're not going to say. They're not, I can tell you right now, certain things they're not going to say. They're not going to start talking crazy about them folk over there in Palestine, them folk over there in Israel. They're not going to speak against Christian Zionism. They're not going to speak against none of that right there. And I personally feel, I'm not saying I heard that from many, I personally feel because they know their place. They know certain things are ministry killers. They know certain things you don't do. Politicians know not to go against Israel. Ministers definitely know their place when it comes to that. And you can say what you want. Black preachers know their place on the totem pole. They know that it is what it is, especially when you're getting any type of funding, any type of support from Europeans that can help you out with ministry. Because I had a building that's hard, getting chairs, and it's hard. It's hard out here. So in that sense, I'm not even mad. I understand.
Yeah, I get it too. And I was part of a ministry, and it does take a lot of money. Unfortunately, we were in a position where we didn't have to seek any white money to get going. Now, here's what's interesting to me. This entire movement seems to have shaken up a lot of the church. I don't know if you've seen the Fred Price stuff recently that they've been posting. And I've been noticing other little comments, of course, the stuff with celebrities going on. And it seems that this movement is all over the world. Do you think at any point this will become a mainstream conversation that is taken seriously about who the real Israelites are?
I definitely think so, because back in the days, even like when I came home, I was listening to some Bishop McKinley, and they were heavy into history and how Cush and how we were connected with Israel and how Israel were a darker hue of people. Some books on Bernard Jordan, the Black presence in the Bible, and that's 28 years ago. And Fred, like I said, Fred Price, more and more people are discussing it in light of this. That's why the church got me, because in light of this racism and everything that's going on in this country right now, we're at a unique place in the world. We have more white people fighting for fair rights, for equal rights, for better treatment for blacks on this planet than we have ever had. So it amazes me that the church can't see it's a major shift. Some people that's attempting to talk, the slave masters, these European evangelicals, are saying that's social justice. That's not the gospel. Leave that alone. So a few of them are fighting here and there. And I got to give it to Dr. E and some of them for trying to put in that work, because we get major backlash from European evangelicals, and they're strong. They're showing their true colors right now. But like always, we're gonna we don't want to buck against them too much. A lot of dudes still see these people as massa. They treated us a certain way. That's why we got the AME church. We stayed having to pull away from these people. And everybody's talking about God is a just God. God is a fair God. Judgment day is coming. And they can't see that things are turning on the entire planet. They can't see it's a shift. It's a new season. And they don't even understand that. And the thing that got me is unsaved other people understand that, and they're saying enough is enough. It's time for a change. And a lot of people, I'm not saying everybody, because I don't want to lump them all together, but it's a lot of individuals in the church that can't see it. And these are supposed to be the black leaders.
Yeah, and that's definitely, to me, that's definitely a problem. A lot of the stuff you said is definitely a problem, and I would love to be able to sit down with some of these guys. We know that's not going to happen. Let me ask you this: with all the information that you know and you've run across, why do you still identify as a Cushite?
Oh, that's a good question. I think I need. Let me be careful how to answer that. It's too real. I think that's a twofold answer. I wanna lay more into some things, and I think even if I got to be careful with that. I think even if it would be more damning to some individuals. So I can throw that out there too. I want to lay into some more information, and I think sometimes I deliberately don't go a little deeper with studies on a specific subject. Let's just put it that way. There's certain things that's up in the air. I'm looking at a lot. I have never been really at all one to follow the crowd. I would have to be fully persuaded and look at some things. I can say definitely, I don't believe everybody over there in Israel is Jesus people. Let's just put it that way. I definitely don't believe that, and I definitely believe there was a bunch of whitewashing and a bunch of lying going on, even when it goes back to Kemet and the Egyptians and why they wanted to pull Egypt out of Africa. I don't want to believe that people have gone this far and have lied this much. And I think that it's kind of confusing, because I do believe so much damage has been done with the slave trade and so many different groups of people coming over here. I'm not saying it's impossible, but I'm not sure who's who. And I don't think I have enough of the information with the amount of individuals coming over here and how things were so mixed up to say for sure. I'd have to be absolutely sure. But I have to be honest, I haven't laid into it that, like, even with the DNA, I've never done anything like that, the 23andMe. I've just never done it.
Now, I haven't done it either, and I plan to, because my mom actually did it. And what interested me is some of the stuff I saw on her DNA report, and it came back that she had 100% less European Neanderthal DNA than all other 23andMe applicants. And I thought that was something weird on the results. And I showed Teo Ministries. So I'm thinking about taking mine and sending my dad one to take his and getting the whole thing done. Now, Virtuous Truth said, "Come on, Berean, we know you're a moderate." Now, I'm not gonna force you to answer that question if you don't want to, but let's talk about that term moderate. Now, I had Brother Dana Stevens. For those of you who caught the interview last week, it's had over 10,000 views so far, and get those thumbs up for those in the chat room. Now, last week, when I interviewed Brother Dana Stevens, he said that he had never been called a moderate and hadn't heard the term moderate used towards him in any way, shape, or form. And I'm also starting to find that is a term that is specifically created for Black people that believe in a Black Israel.
Yes.
Do you think that they did that intentionally to separate Black believers from all other believers, or was that something that just sort of happened?
I think it's a little bit of both. For some reason, the most the ones that they fear the most are the moderates, or who we would call messianic believers that believe that Jesus, Yeshua, is the Christ. And I understand doctrinally why they could be a little bit nervous. I was listening to Pastor Kelly and Pastor Johnson on Sister E's show last night with Elder Mike Holloway, and talking about the Sabbath. There's a lot of stuff that being that acts, when we start dealing with the Sabbath, when we start dealing with the law, when we start dealing with certain things, Christians got some problem. We got some problem. And I'm a Christian. As a Pentecostal tongue-talking Christian, we got some problems with the Shabbat. We got some problems with the church fathers. We got some problems with traditions and things we see from the apostles, because they were Israelites. We can't deny it. So all that whole clique, all of them were what we would call moderates, or all of them are what we would call messianics. And as time went on, it's a heavy argument to argue the Sabbath and to argue certain things. And I think a lot of people know that. I don't know the shift, because we've always had Seventh-day Adventists that was around us, and we've never had that problem. And I've never in my whole life in the church seen things come up like how the Sabbath is coming up and how certain things are coming up, which comes with the custom of being Israel, and how and I'm just kind of shocked how the church is so against it, when so much stuff is Bible. Even these people would come and say this has nothing to do with salvation. The fringes, the diet has nothing to do with salvation. It just kind of shocks me how people would still hold on to things that come from in the interiors of Europe. And they would rather just hold on to that and just say, well, we're American. This is part of American culture. And they would rather hold on to this, or this is kingdom culture, and they would rather hold on to this and fight so hard against something else, when so much of that stuff can be proven biblically. Not saying, because I go to church, sometimes I'm in church every single day, sometimes I'm going 3 months, I ain't stepping inside the church. It just depends. Right now I happen to be in church on a regular. I work for a church right now, but I think that's a problem. And I think one of the reasons that those that we would call messianics, because they are so close to biblical primitive believers, that it's a problem. A lot of Christians, a lot of pastors know that they're not following the primitive way. They're saying the primitive way means nothing. Saying the primitive way means nothing, but it does mean something. And there's a lot of people that want to get back to it. So we have plenty of people that's walking away just because of the tithe lie. Just because of the lie with the tithes, just because of the Christmas tree, just because of the Easter egg, just because they know so many pastors are Masons and they're part of Divine Nine and fraternities and stuff. People are just walking away and they want something closer. They want something closer to that which is primitive. And a lot of people want to be locked. They want to step away from European culture. We've been dealing with that culture, and that's been a culture of supremacy. And we want to just go back to some roots. And people are seeking that right now. And that's one of the reasons that they don't want to sit down and talk. I personally believe, no one said this to me, but I personally believe that that's one of the main reasons they don't want to sit down and talk, because it's what some people practice is closer to the book of Acts, is closer to the time of Messiah than what we got going on right now. Some of what I would call a zoo. It's a zoo. They say that one of the comments that came into him from some other pastors, like I'm talking, and when I talk about crazy Pentecostals as the zoo. Not all Pentecostal charismatics, but some Pentecostals as the zoo. And there's some good regular Reformed churches out here that's not just running amok and just acting crazy. And I do bear witness there are some good churches out here. I don't want to lump them all together. So some people feel that because I've been involved in charismatic circles and I've seen so much nonsense that I always speak to the nonsense. But I tell the other pastors, if I'm not talking about you, if it don't fly, if it don't apply, let it fly. Don't worry about it, But for some reason, they're upset. Any way they slice the cake, this could be God. And if this is God, this is what I'm telling them. If it is God, you're wasting your time fighting against it. Oh, then God ain't gonna drag us back into the law. I know. But everybody's not trying to get salvation from the law, Sabbath, or diet, period. And that's kind of the problem. And if they're going to get anybody on anything, they're going to do it with Galatians. They're going to do it with the Bible. I talk to a lot of pastors, a lot of ministers, and when we start talking about, the slave trade, and we start talking about primary sources dealing with history and historical facts and stuff like that, a lot of them don't want to spend time, and they don't want to spend time in that. They don't want to. They want to just turn a blind eye to it. Could these people be wrong? And I'm starting to say to even the apologists of certain Christian communities, people in Christian community, if y'all are going to, just like Sinetta, just like the conscious community, if they had information, if Polite, Sinetta, if all of them SETI, all of them had information to expose and tear down the Bible and the whole belief system, they would have done it long time ago. If y'all got information to tear them down, don't play no games, don't wait to drop no books, get out here and blow at them and blow shots and blow the information. For some reason, they're not doing it. Either one, they don't have it. Two, they're not steeped in history and they don't have time looking into it. Or three, they know something and they don't want nobody to start looking into what they found out.
Now, it's interesting you mentioned the church not wanting to follow the law, and God has freed us from the law, and yet Christ said that loving your neighbor as yourself is fulfillment of the law. And to me, that would seem self-explanatory, because I don't know what other law Christ would be talking about. And then we see that the church is moving. They don't want to keep the Sabbath. They don't want to follow the law. As you mentioned, they bring in the bunnies, they bring in the trees, and then they tell us not to put culture over Christ. Do you think they have at some point put European culture over Christ versus the culture in the Bible?
Definitely. And they're so steeped in the European culture, they don't even see it's a problem because they're so used to it. And it is what it is. And anything. And the thing that hurts me is that they would fight against it, that they would fight. If they know the Christmas tree, if they know the bunny, and they say those are small things, those are petty things, but you can say what you want, using that tree, using that bunny, using Valentine's Day, using that tithe inappropriately. Israelites have brought that out. Camps on the corner all across America, IURC, ISUPK, they brought all these things out, and this has allowed some people to walk away. This has caused some people to walk away. This has caused some people to question the Bible and question Christianity, and for some reason, they don't even want to abandon it. A few years back, Eric Mason did say, I think last year or whatever, he just posted on Facebook. He said, well, if you are doing urban ministry or ministry in an urban context, maybe y'all should fall back from having a tree. You're going to finally say that now? because it's a problem right now. It's been a problem. And you should tell everybody that care about these brothers walking away from the church, abandon them trees, abandon them eggs, abandon that stuff, and pick up something else. Or don't do what they did in the beginning. For some reason, they don't want to do that. They're fighting against it. They're fighting against it. And it seems like they don't care. To me personally, it seems like a lot of them don't care, because if you know it's not in the Bible and you keep doing it, you just don't give up. You just don't care. And it is what it is.
Now, with that said, and I agree with you, they just don't care at some point.
You don't care.
Do you think that their salvation could possibly be in jeopardy if they don't let go of the pagan elements that have been introduced, or does God not care about that anymore?
They're saying God doesn't care about that. That's what they're saying. They're saying, listen, you wilding out with that tree. None of us bow down in front of a tree. And that's absolutely true. I've never seen a Christian bow down in front of a tree. My problem is the mere fact that brothers are leaving the church and brothers are going over there to ISUPK and people are walking away from the faith. That should be enough for y'all to abandon it right there. They don't want to do it. They say you're making a big thing. And for some reason, I'm thinking more and more churches will just do it on the strength. If it offends a brother, stop collecting the tithes. Teach on the tithes. What is the tithe? We'll ride out that tithe to the end. Oh, well, the tithe existed. And I know all the answers. The tithe was around before Moses and the law was around. Then we go to Abraham, but we're going to do whatever we're going to do. So we want to pick some things up and we want to explain things some way. The Bible does say to give, and it's okay to give. We don't have a problem with that, but we have to be forced to give explanations because the so-called wicked people are out there teaching it. So now we have to come, and as if you come, there's a culture in church that you can't ask any questions. All of that has to come down. All of that has to come down. And I think all of this can't be the devil. I don't think the devil is this powerful. I'm thinking that the hand of God can be behind shaking up the church. I'm thinking it's COVID. I'm thinking this whole thing going down in some crazy type of way. I'm thinking God has allowed for these churches to close up. Now, this way they got a problem with me, but I'm thinking that God has allowed for some of these churches to close up to get people to thinking, to get people to focus back on Him and stop getting caught up into quote unquote church culture. Church culture, the cult of church is a problem. And once again, I'm not saying every single church. Some people know to keep their marriages, don't put your pastor above your husband. Some people know that, but at the same time, there's some things that it's been going on too long. It's been going on too long. And I think this could be the hand of God. And the more that I'm looking around and the more that I'm looking at people's reactions to certain things, the more I'm thinking this is God and this is a religious spirit that's at work. A lot of this ain't relationship with Yah. A lot of this is religion. And religion that had our people, we done ran amok with this religion.
Now, you just said something. You talk about a move of God, and it just so happens that 400-year prophecy is at its end, and we saw in January how all this stuff started. Do you think it's a coincidence that the 400-year prophecy is coinciding with COVID, the shutdowns, all the disasters around the world? And I'm gonna have one more question for you after this, and then we're gonna wrap it up. We definitely got to do another one after this because people got a lot of questions. So do you think it's a coincidence that all this is happening right now?
My church friends think it's a coincidence, but I'm saying, man, something is going on. Something is going on. And like I said, I don't think it's the devil. I don't know if it's directly connected with the 400 years. I think we have to, I said I was going to do a program on prophecy and looking at some things, because all my friends are concerned about is at least a lot of people that I know, all they're concerned about is Israel, 1948, Israel become a nation, Daniel, all of this other stuff. So I said I might have to do a series on different prophecy and prophecy being fulfilled in the Bible. I had Elder Mike Holloway on him, and Sister E, I think she was on here, Sister Ian, and Pastor Major. Was it Pastor Major that was on here? And we were talking just 2 days ago, something like that. I'm talking to so many people just 2 days ago, and we were discussing that. And a lot of people don't see it that way, but there's something going on. There's something going on. Let me see. Oh, I'm sorry. I thought I see.
Yeah, I agree. It's something definitely going on. To me, I don't believe in big coincidences such as all the stuff that's going on around here. Mm-hmm. Now, we definitely have to do another one because I want to get into the deep state and the Illuminati and the Freemasons. And man, we got a lot to talk about. So let me ask you this last question for the night. For those of you who have not put the thumbs up yet, please do so. If you haven't subscribed, please do so. If you could go back 20 years into the past, what 3 things would you tell or warn yourself about the modern Christian church right now?
Keep an eye on the church. I don't trust when it comes to the church, and I don't even mean to say this in a bad way. Focus on God. I think a lot of the turmoil, a lot of the stuff that and I'm talking personally, that I've personally gone through is growing up in church and honoring the pastor, honoring the bishop. A lot of times people are running these churches. People have these churches and they have another agenda that's separate from God. A lot of times God will be speaking to you outside of what the religious order is saying. And I think I think I would have been in a better place if I would have focused more on God and just like automatically I'm locking in the bishop, I'm locking in church with this is God. You can be in the church and you can be part of another agenda that the Most High didn't order or he didn't call for. Make sure you're always hearing God, even in church stuff. Make sure God is in it. And it is God, and it's just not religion. It's just not because politics are locked up with a religion, or this is just not man's agenda.
All right, now what?
I believe y'all with that.
Okay, perfect. Now, how do you? Okay, you're gonna leave them with that. I was gonna ask if you wanted to say something else. So go ahead and tell us how everybody gets in touch with you, and give them all your contact info.
Oh, you can get in touch with me at bereanteach@gmail.com. That's bereanteach@gmail.com. And I'm Brother Berean on Facebook. I appreciate everybody. I appreciate all the support, even after everything jumped off with me and the whole woke movement and Dr. E. I can't lie, my messianic people, or so what they would call, quote unquote, my moderates, they held me down, give me encouraging words, prayer, support. Like, man, we riding with you. We riding with you. Don't worry. The Most High with you. We praying for you. And I appreciate all the prayers and the support. Of course, the church don't think y'all prayers mean nothing because y'all want to keep the Shabbat. So y'all prayers don't mean nothing like some good old Sunday keepers. But I felt the prayers and God has definitely turned some things around. I want to say I appreciate, Pastor Majors and other people. Sister E, I love her, my home girl. She's the one, even after leaving the bishop office and talking to her, I said, I got to fall back. I got to blow shots at y'all. Just listen to her voice. She said, I understand. You got a family. You got to do what you got to do. Oh, that just broke me down in the cab. I just went back to the Airbnb and I just turned that camera on and wilded out. I think a lot of stuff happened just meeting her and far as that shift and just getting me back lined up. Listen, this is a woman of God right here. She got to be on the channel with you. People got to see that. People got to see a good side to this Israel thing. And I'm like, God, just give me some wisdom on how to play this thing out. This is, messing with these church folk. This is chess. This is checkers. This ain't checkers. This is chess. And it's just crazy. And I think it was a good thing having her on and different people seeing, listen, we got some believers. We got some believers out here that love the Lord, that ain't out here living all type of way, just talking all type of way. And I think that's a good look. And I think that was important having her on. And I've been just blessed by meeting her and just chopping it up with Pastor Majors and other people that I believe are definitely part of the body of Christ. I definitely believe y'all is doing something with them. And I believe they're the next level of believers. I ain't saying everybody got to go claiming Israel, but I don't want the church trying to act like everybody on the corner threatening violence and raping people, because that's not what it is. And they starting to slowly see. I think with everything I often say on the channel, it's a lot of bootleg. It's a lot of bootleg out here. And I think even with certain groups that's out here on the corners and talking all their race-filled stuff and talking some of their hate, I think that's the bootleg to the real thing. But the real thing is here. And I thank God for that the real thing is here. All right, y'all, I got to go to work in the morning.
All right. Thank you, Brother Berean, for stopping by.
I appreciate it. Love y'all. I appreciate it.
Watch out for the bootlegs. Make sure you hit them thumbs up. Make sure you tune in next time. And again, Brother Berean, we got to link up so we could do another one of these.
Definitely, bro. Definitely.
Everybody, thank y'all for coming out. And God bless y'all. With that said, I'm out.